Today's guest is Jordan Harry, founder
Hey,
of
hey.
Studyfast, and he delivered a TED Talk on how to read a book a day. Jordan, go ahead and just dive into it and tell us what you do and where you want to go with that.
Awesome. First of all, thank you for having me. I wish I had a cool voice like yours. To get
What are you
started,
talking about? Look at your accent.
oh, I forget. It sounds posh. I'll go with the posh. I'll go with the posh. My name's Jordan. I recently did a TED Talk on how to read a book a day. That came from being a founder of a speed reading company. I got approached to this TED Talk to an audience of, I think on the day, about 20 people. So don't let the audience, know you off. But I thought to myself, if I can deliver a quality pitch where I can imagine there's 100,000 people, that everyone in that audience deserves to get some sort of value, it will be a hit. And it's growing. I think I checked yesterday, it's got about 200,000 views, which is incredible. I don't think I know 200 people, let alone 100,000 views. But I do now. And it's had a tipping point, it's had a knock on effect, and it's allowed me to be in a position I am right now, speaking with you. So, yeah.
Did you think that the TED Talk would have that kind of leverage for your position, or did you not even expect anything like this kind of growth and reach?
I think when you do something of high quality, and I always say, your timing will come if you're good enough. And, still, I have a lot of potential still to go, and I have a lot more to learn. But I thought to myself, if I can really put myself on a platform, just that opportunity, that hard work and opportunity will equal good luck. I don't believe in good luck. So I feel like the hard work, the opportunity have to match up. And that's when you get good luck. For me, there was a lot of variables. I know I had one take. I also knew that there was a lot of things that had to go from the back end of it. I don't know if people were interested in reading more. It's not a topic I was particularly interested in.
Right.
And I'll get to the story of why I started speed reading and started teaching others. And yeah, to my surprise, a lot of people had common problems that I had when I started out. Like the voice in your head when you're reading, which you probably weren't aware of, but you probably are now. Things like getting to the bottom of the page and thinking, what on earth did I just read?
Yeah, all the
And,
time.
yeah, and I'm not superhuman. It still happens to me. So I really felt like I had a message which could hopefully impact one or two people, and hopefully they would share it, one or two people. But to my surprise, it's hit quite a few more than one or two. And
Definitely
it's
a lot
me,
more.
thank you, thank you. And it's me to step my game up even further because I feel like I'm accountable to
Right.
keep producing value.
So tell us a little bit about that story. Why you got interested in speed reading. I know you mentioned it in the TED Talk, but just for those who haven't seen the TED Talk,
Yeah,
explain your story and then briefly just go over the tips. We don't have to go too in detail because they can watch the TED Talk.
yeah. I'll save you 10 minutes of your life, and I'll do some speed talking. But my story started. It's always one of those things. You think, oh, it started in year one at uni, but it started all the way back when I was 10 years of age. And we joked at the beginning about my posh accent, but it's not always been like that. When I was 10, I had a speech impediment. So I had a lisp. So I could say my S's, F's, H. And because I couldn't pronounce the words correctly, my comprehension suffered.
Mm.
And because I didn't know what a word meant, my reading speed was held back. And I was always trying to catch up to my peers. Thankfully to my mother, I'm a mama's boy, she took me to speech therapy at a young age, and I got this beautiful posh accent where I can now pronounce my S's and my F's. But then when I got to university, I realized I was still missing a trick. I was still struggling with the amount of information. I didn't feel like I had enough time, and I lacked the motivation. So I Googled one night how to read faster. To my surprise, there was a few sources out there about these mythical creatures called speed readers. And I reached out to them, and a lot of them were old men in their 60s with 50 PhDs and 70 years of experience. I just did the maths, that doesn't add up. It's a good reading.
Oh
But what
man.
I found was I didn't start learning how to speed read to set up a business. It was purely to solve my own personal problem. And as a result, I started reading more books because I knew nothing about business. I was studying a sports degree. I don't encourage anyone to drop out of uni, but I was in that kind of time frame where those thoughts were going through my head. and entrepreneurship, it's romanticized. Yeah, being your own boss, passive income, and I realized I'd spent £300 on these books. My bookshelf looked great. Anyone that walked in looked like I had an IQ beyond Einstein. The problem was I only read about 2 of those books, and I couldn't read. So I revisited this speed reading process. I thought, okay, if I can teach myself, I can teach my friends. And before I knew it, my friends were like, hey, Jordan, you should start charging for this. So I winged it, set up a Facebook event. I had no material. I think I just came up with a random number, £9. I thought, yeah, I'll pay £9. Went to a house party, came back from the house party, and had made 1 sale. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that blew my mind. For 2 reasons: that someone trusted me enough to give me that kind of card details and make that transaction. And number 2, I was pooing my pants because I had no material and now I had to come up with something within a week. So that's where it started, and it's now snowballed into what it is today.
Awesome. I love the story. And your first experience when you did have to come up with material on the spot, how did that go? Was it a success? Did you reach failure? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's interesting, and I actually screenshotted something recently. It was a 2-hour workshop held in a university room, and it wasn't legal. The university caught up with me because, of course, I was using their rooms and I was charging people, and they found out about it after my 5th workshop. And we'll get onto that another time.
Okay.
But nonetheless, this first workshop, I had about 50 people, which was way beyond what my workshops are now. It's 15. And as you can imagine, in 2 hours, trying to condense something that I'd spent about 3 years learning was a tricky task, especially when you've got people with dyslexia, people who are bookworms, people who are athletes and actually don't have a motivation to read. They just want to get their grades and get going.
Right.
So within those 2 hours, there was a lot of questions. I handled it as well as I could. And by the end of it, all my friends wanted to go out and celebrate. But I just couldn't. I didn't feel like I did the people in that room service. And afterwards, I messaged some of them saying, hey, I'm going to make you a program. God, I went above and beyond. And it's great. There was a message from one guy who said, why do you care so much? And I responded with another big paragraph, and he never got back to me. And I kind of felt, how can I say? I kind of felt a bit low after the first one, purely because I was like, I put all this work in, I'm willing to follow up with people.
Right.
But they just don't see the passion. And, fast forward 3 years, I do the TED Talk. This guy watches the TED Talk, and he messages me. He's like, Jordan, you might not remember me, but I attended your first workshop. And he said, I didn't believe what you were teaching me. He said, I admit that. He said, after watching your TED Talk and the development that you've had since that first one, he says, I see why you cared so much. And he says, I want to be part of all the training you're doing. He said, online courses, one-to-one, I want to work with you. And that blew my mind. That because from day one I had, one fan, and I looked after that one fan, it's been so much easier looking after the hundreds that have now come along. And I'm very thankful for that mentality in the beginning, because I feel like a lot of people want 100, 10,000 followers, but they're not willing to look after Susan or James who comment on their Instagram photo saying, love this photo, but yet they still want a huge base. So from day one, I was saying, thank you, let's connect. And now I'm in a position where I spend my mornings and my evenings just responding to people, responding. Even if there's no real value for myself.
Yeah.
I don't believe you can't expect to give, expecting something to come back to you, because you're losing if you start doing that.
Do you watch Gary Vee?
I go through, I dip in and dip out.
Okay. Because what you're saying is a lot of what Gary Vee preaches. You can't be all caught up in the egotistical, oh, I have this fan base, or try to follow people to get a follow back. You need true fans. It's not about how many. And you need to, when people comment on your post, to comment back, to give them a like, to interact with them the best you can.
I'm glad I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, you are. He's a huge...
about Gary Vee, they need to follow him, right?
Yeah, they do. Especially if you want to take what you do, what you love, and turn it into a business like what you've done.
Yeah.
But shifting gears a little bit, or actually, it's still on the same topic, but how long does it take to really start to see improvement from what you teach? Because, okay, I have the 10 steps down that I got from watching your video on what to do. But applying this on the first day, probably not going to see much improvement. How long should one expect until they start to see, okay, I'm able to read a book a day?
I'm really glad you asked that question. Purely because a lot of people, especially speed readers or memory trainers, they sell a story. We can triple your reading speed in 7 days. Da, 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 da. Now, for me, it's like anything. If you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Okay.
So I teach people how to read fast and remember more. So as a good rule of thumb, and the results that I've seen from students, and they vary, of course you get the highly dedicated, I would say 20 minutes, all it takes a day. And I'd say 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. If you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. So I'd say 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, of practicing or at least reducing one of the habits that is holding your reading speed back for 21 days. Various studies say 60 days, 21 days to make a habit. But a month of just small actions, it's that compound interest. And a great way you can start is just by having your book on your bedside table and saying, I'm going to read this book for 2 minutes. I call them small habits. And the great thing about a small habit, you may be familiar with the term,
yes,
is 2 minutes is such a little requirement of energy. And whenever we try and do something new, I believe it's like a 20-second window where we have resistance. We say to ourselves, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to respond to the emails, but first let me reply to my Facebook messages. But once you've got past that 20-second window, you then find yourself being in this mindset and in this flow, which a lot of your listeners probably are familiar with. So the 2 minutes is small enough that by the end of the 2 minutes, you probably want to keep reading. And if you don't, it's something that you can do each day. And that helps with habit formation, consistency. So if you can make a small habit each day for a month, you're going to see dramatic results.
Okay.
But within a couple of hours of the training I deliver, I can double your reading speed and maintain the comprehension, if not increase it. And that's the important thing, comprehension.
Right, and that happens within a couple hours after learning your techniques?
Yeah, but for those results to be sustained, like I say, it has to be trained constantly, just like being an athlete. One training session, your muscles, of course, break down. You need rest, recover, you come back stronger. But if you don't keep training, those results will wear off.
What do you do if you're reading something? I know you get this question all the time. Like fiction is easy. Certain textbooks are a little bit harder. What do you have tip-wise? Because, like you said, comprehension is the most important. When you're reading something like poetical style, so I'll give you a couple examples, like psychologists like Carl Jung, or even the Bible, right? In that kind of wording, where it's, maybe you understand it well, or creative people do, or people with high IQs, but I have a hard time comprehending poetical written style books where they use metaphors. I'm like, huh?
Yeah, and you're not the only one with this. Even for myself. So you'll see on my website, it says I can read at 1,500 words per minute. And to put that in perspective, that's 7 times the average reader.
Yeah.
Which sounds fantastic, but if I read the Bible, which I haven't read for a few years, I'll have to slow down.
Okay.
Because your reading speed is limited to your comprehension. So, for example, I'm trying to learn Spanish right now. If I was to read something in Spanish, I won't be reading that fast. And I know that's an extreme example, but it's relative to reading something in context that you're just not familiar with. If there's keywords like thermodynamics, you don't know what thermodynamics is, go look it up in a dictionary and then come back and finish that sentence.
Okay.
So I know I haven't given you the answer you're looking for, but one tip you can do is learn a new word every day. And just a disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with these guys. If you download Word of the Day app on the iOS store, free app, I definitely recommend it to all users. And you can set a notification where it tells you at 9:30 the word of the day. And they're big words. And what's great about that is the bigger your vocabulary, the faster your reading speed. Because the more words you comprehend, the less processing time it takes for your brain. And you can make those mental images a lot quicker. So I hope that helps with that, where definitely. It does vary on what you're reading, and definitely with the motivation. If it's a If you've got a meeting in 10 minutes and you have to get through the report, you'll get through it okay. But if you're sitting down and you've got an assignment in 6 weeks, it's called the Parkinson's Law. A task expands in difficulty with the more time that we give to it. But when we've all had a night to do the assignment, we get it done, we realize, it wasn't that hard. So yeah, 1 word a day, it's that small habit, nice and easy. And hopefully you'll start seeing at least your comprehension increase. And as a knock-on result, your reading speed will.
Yeah, no, I think that'll help me a lot because that's typically what I struggled with is a lot of the big words that I'm just not used to seeing, or at least in that format in the sentence structure. I'm not used to seeing it used in that type of way. So I think Word of the Day app will help a lot. So I'm going to try that out.
Awesome.
But I was super excited when you said you were trying to learn Spanish because I am too. I'm interested to find out what you're doing. Like, what are your strategies to learn Spanish? I'm assuming you want to learn it as fast as possible, but also comprehend it well. So what are you doing for it?
Awesome. So, learning a language is something that I'm actually creating an online course for. It's all about memory. And I'm now delving in, how do we take memory techniques and apply them to learning a new language? And there's a lot of similarities. So the first thing is a thing called brute learning. I got them mixed up with dual coding. So brute learning is where a lot of hackers use this method. So they'll use various passwords to try and hack into someone's account. Now, what you want to do with this is you want to use various mediums. So first of all, auditory. So listen to Spanish music, Spanish TV. Auditory is one sense. Of course, visual. Apps like Duolingo, I know they've tried to incorporate brute learning by spoken, and I also think you can tap the little sound button and it will say out loud. But you need to kind of attack it from all different angles. You need to get real practice in person, speaking with someone else who is fluent in a language. But what I'm going through, the process, is an end goal, nice and easy. If there's no end goal, what gets measured? 1 second. What's the Peter Drucker thing? I think what gets measured gets managed.
Okay, right? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, Peter Drucker, what gets measured, get managed. Please don't quote me on that. It might be slightly... But basically, if you have an end goal and you measure day by day, you will accomplish it. If you don't have an end goal, if you don't have a reward at the end, you won't see it through. So I know towards the end of July, I'll be going out to Spain. So within that time, I want to get to if I don't know the word, I can describe the word I'm looking for. So I'm learning the verbs right now. Other ways to learn is, especially with another language, they can sound quite foreign. And the great way you can remember a new word is by associating it to something you already know. And we do this already. We attach new bits of information to pre-existing information, and it makes the learning process a lot easier. So, for example, we'll take habla. Habla means speak. It's quite original, kind of the first step for many first learners, because you want to ask someone, habla español or habla inglés? That's always the first thing I lead with. And the way I remember habla is abs, as in the muscle. And then I think of a female with abs because of la, like the female singer, la 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 la. It's quite vivid, quite abstract. But the way that we remember stuff is with visual images, and not your plain vanilla visual images, abstract ones. We don't remember what we had for dinner 2 days ago. At least I don't. But we do remember a car crash that we potentially had 5 years ago. We remember what day it was, what the weather was, who was in the car, potentially what we were wearing, because we have different forms of memory. I won't get into that now, but we have procedural, semantic, and our brain stores different parts of that. So if we can attach a boring vanilla word like habla and think of a female with abs singing la, and when you sing, your abs tense up, the more information that you can attach to a new bit of information, you'll be able to bring on new hooks that you can retrieve. So if you're like, I can't remember the word for speak, but I remember a girl singing and her abs tensing up, habla. And that's how you work backwards. So I hope that helps with learning a new word and hopefully a new language.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I'm going to try that out as well, because all I've been doing lately is the Duolingo app. But when you said have a target or have a goal, does that mean have a deadline of when you should or when you want to learn that language? Like, so for you, you're going to Spain soon, so that's your deadline when you want to have at least minimal proficiency in the language. Do you suggest that for everybody, or should I set a deadline even though I'm not going to Spain? Should I be like, okay, in 6 months, I need to have this down pat?
Correct. And I've just remembered it is what gets measured gets managed. So you guys can quote me now. Because you're right. If you don't set a deadline, it's like Parkinson's law. It will consistently expand in difficulty, perceived expansion. And because there's no motivation to learn it by a certain deadline, you say, I'll get round to it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. So by having a deadline, you have something that's going to get measured and managed day by day. And potentially a week out from going to Spain, I'll step my game up.
Cool. And right before I ask you our last question, tell everybody where they can find you, Instagram, your website, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And if you aren't bored of my voice just yet and you want to see me in person, head over to studyfast.uk. .co.uk was way too expensive. But if you head over to .uk Studyfast, you'll find online courses, free materials such as blogs, some cool apps to test out your reading speed, to see where you actually sit. So the average reading speed is 250 words per minute. So put that to the test. The great thing about speed reading is I'm now expanding into memory, into hacking everything to do with learning. So whether that's your sleeping pattern, to learning a new language, to even note-taking. I'm always looking to connect with people as well. So if you head over to Instagram, you can follow me at Jordan Harry, 2 N's, 2 Y's, and you'll see stuff from my athletics career, to me being stupid, to me sharing some valuable tips on how you can read and remember more.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan.
You're welcome.
And Jordan, what are some tips for sleeping? I'm very interested as someone who has insomnia. What do you suggest to improve your sleep quality?
So there's a few things. So we talked about habit. So that would be number one. If we're going to start with, say, 3 golden tips, I'd say get yourself into a habit. So by 11 o'clock, I make myself, it's going to sound quite weird, a turmeric tea. That's more athletics performance. We can do another podcast on athletics performance. But I make myself that tea. I then shut down all electronic devices. So laptop, phone goes away. If I do use my phone, nice little hack for your listeners, turn on night mode on your phones. I'll just get my phone out to make sure I'm going the right way about it. So if you head to your settings, and I believe if you head to displays, you'll then have to scroll down. It should have night mode. Let's see. Yeah, night shift. Now you might have to update your iPhone. Okay. I don't know about your Android users, but you'll see night shift. And you can set time for when it comes on. Can you see that on your phone?
It's under general settings?
Display and brightness.
Display and brightness.
You should see night shift underneath the brightness.
Okay. I don't even see display and set. Huh. Okay, I'll find it later.
Awesome.
Though. Oh, wait. I think I just found it. Yeah, I just found it. Night shift. I think mine is already set on from 8 p.m. to 8:30 a.m.
Great minds think alike. Now, what that will do, that will put like an orange film over your screen between those hours. Sounds quite weird, but what happens is our bodies are in a circadian rhythm. So back to caveman era, when the sun was out, you would be awake, and as soon as the sun goes down, they would go to sleep. And we haven't moved far from them. So what happens is when we use our phones at night, there's a blue light that is emitted. Then that tells our brain, hey, it's still daylight, stay up. And when we get into the science of it, it blocks melatonin, which tells our body to fall asleep. So when it blocks that hormone, we struggle to sleep at night, which, like you say, that's potentially why you suffered with insomnia. So by putting that orange film on to your phone, it removes the blue light, and you can still use your electronic device and switch it off, and hopefully get to sleep a lot quicker. So number one is get a habit of routine, even on the weekends. Make sure you're falling asleep at the right time and waking up at the same time. Try not to sleep in on the weekends, because then your body doesn't get into that habit. Habit number 1.1 is put on night shift on your iPhone, and that will help block the blue light. Habit number 2 would be try to make your room as dark as possible. It kind of leads on back to the night shift. But a lot of people have alarm clocks on their bedside table, digital ones specifically. Just turn them a little bit away from you, just so even when your eyelids are shut, that light can still get through. It's incredible. And number three top habit for getting the best sleep possible, I would say, is reading. Purely because it gets your body into a relaxed state of mind. Now, don't read anything too heavy. This is where reading novels and putting that book on your bedside table before bed helps. There's various studies, and if you head to studyfast.uk, I recently wrote a blog on how reading can actually help you sleep at night. And it can also help with problem solving, because just before you go to bed, that's when you want to learn a new skill. Because your brain is in this diffused state. It often happens when we're in the shower. We come up with our best ideas in the shower. I don't know about you, Claudia.
I'm not very creative, so I don't come up with many ideas.
I like that. Well, maybe you need to be taking more showers.
Maybe so.
Hopefully some of your listeners have taken a shower. I hope that's one thing they've done.
I've heard it before, yes.
Yeah. You come up with some of your best ideas, because whilst the water's hitting your skin, your brain's distracted, and it can allow yourself to get this heightened state where you can then think about problems and cognitive efforts a lot better. And this happens at night time. So reading a book at night, something nice and easy, you'll find your brain wanders and it's like, that idea. And make sure you write it down and come back to it.
Practice my Spanish at night. That's what I got to do.
100%. I tried learning chess in like 30 days, and I tried getting to a level, I think it was like 800. I can't remember what they measure it in chess. 800 is quite high. At least it was for me. And I used to play chess every night before I went to sleep. And what you'll find is a lot of people try and get that last minute revision the night before the exam. I would encourage that, because when you do a cognitive effort just before you sleep, it's the last thing you remember. So whilst you're sleeping, your body starts healing. And whilst it's healing, it consolidates what you've been throughout that day. And the freshest memory was the thing you just did. A lot of athletes try to do visual training before they sleep. So they try to picture themselves lifting, running, throwing. So in the morning, their motor skills are refined a little bit more. And there's some more geeky science on neurons. And I think they tested with a small group of athletes and found that the myelin sheath, which is this protection around the neurons, actually thickened. And the thicker it is, the faster the signals are sent. And it thickened in the athletes that did that visual imagery before they slept.
Huh. So it was basically like training the mind physically, but they were just doing it mentally.
100%. So they were actually training whilst they slept. Right. At least their motor skills were. Oh. So that's what they say. Anything that's a cognitive effort, such as learning chess, a language, revision, could be done at night time, because in the morning, your body's gone through that process.
Right. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
And how many hours of sleep do you get a night, on average?
Now, this is a tricky one. Once again, you read various things and people say different things. Gary Vee, I know, gets 1 hour.
Yeah, that guy's insane.
But the thing I would recommend is you have to decide what your goals are in your life. So I want to be a top international athlete. I can't be a top international athlete and a top entrepreneur purely because you only have so many hours in a day. And to be a top athlete, you need your rest and recovery. So I always try and get 8 hours, which studies have said that is the optimum for muscular recovery. So I try to get no less than 8 hours. So really try and make the most of every hour I have each day. But for listeners, where they're not trying to be top athletes, I have read 4 hours is all you need to function properly next day. Now I say function properly next day with an emphasis, purely because your brain needs to go through 4 REM cycles, REM cycles, and then in like 90-minute cycles. That's enough for your brain. Whilst you're asleep at night, it washes out the toxins in your brain and your body, and it takes 4 hours to do that. So that's the bare minimum. So any hustlers out there listening, for a good 2 years, if you want to, I'm not a doctor, but I would say you could get away with 4 hours of sleep. But if you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle, 8 hours has seemed to be the spot. but it is down to the individual. I know a lot of people who can function off less than 8 hours and are great athletes. And I know people like Roger Federer. I think he has his own home away from his wife where he sleeps, I think, like 12 hours. But I mean, that's his body's his livelihood.
I would love to be able to sleep 12 hours.
And me.
But, okay, last question, and then I promise I'll let you go.
That's fine. My brain hurts.
What book has impacted you the most?
Ooh, easy one. And it's one that I get asked quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And it would be How to Win Friends and Influence Others. I see you know them.
I've heard the book, yep.
The listeners will be like, what? How can he see him? We're on Skype at the moment. The book has quite a cynical title. Don't be put off by it and don't think it's manipulative. It's done so well. And allow me to put some perspective. I think it was written in 1980. You might have to correct me on that. By Dale Carnegie. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But a great author nonetheless. And the examples he gives can still be used today. He talks about people like Abraham Lincoln and how presidents remembered the client's son's birthday. And because you make such a small effort in being interested in other people, they'll be interested in you. Things like the importance of a handshake, where to look on someone's face with eye contact. The list goes on. And that book was really the turning point for my kind of personal and professional life. It's improved my relationships, both romantically and friendships and business, because I understand someone's name is the best compliment you can give them. And if you get it wrong, it's probably the best insult you can give them. Nice. So when we apply that to memory, I try and hit that home so much because everyone's gone through that. You've met someone else joins the conversation, you've now got to introduce them, and you're like, oh, this is the person I've been speaking for 30 minutes, but I don't remember your name. So it helps with those situations. But when you're in a business situation, remembering someone's name can really turn a deal. So if there's one book anyone reads after this, it's How to Win Friends, Influence Others. Head to Amazon. I think it's about £6. Audiobook, I'm pretty sure it's on audiobook. Audiobooks are awesome right now. So that would be my number one recommended book.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to reread that because when I first read it, it didn't resonate with me too well. But, it sounds like it'd be very practical to things in my life right now.
Yeah, and don't let that kind of knock your confidence that you don't remember it. Books are like best friends. You should be able to go back to them. Books aren't only meant to be read once. We're asking too much of ourselves if we expect to remember everything the author tries to give us in one read. That's why I'm so big on highlighting and underlining and circling key information, because when I go back to that book, I thank previous Jordan for doing all the hard work, because now it takes me half the time to read that book again because I know where the key points are. And it's that revision, it's that repetition, it'll go back in again.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for being a part of this podcast. I'll make sure to put your Instagram down below so they can find you there, and then hopefully go out and check out your website.
And when you do come across my Instagram page, don't worry about following me. Hit me up in the DMs. Just hit me up, be like, hey, Jordan, listen, tell me where you heard me from, and I'll make sure I get you a free online course. It's the least I can do. And please reach out to me with any specific problems you have. We're on this earth. We're not sure how long we're on this earth for, to put it simply. And as long as I can bring as much value as possible, I can sleep easy at night. So I believe what you're doing, my man, and I hope your listeners are too.